The Unryu, known as Heavenward-Bound Dragon, was the lead ship of her class and an advanced carrier built following the losses at Midway. She was commissioned on August 6, 1944, under the command of Captain Konami Konishi, a seasoned leader with previous service on the Abukuma and 2 destroyer divisions. Although technically part of Vice Admiral Ozawa's mobile fleet during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, Unryu and her sister carrier Amagi were unable to participate due to a lack of aircraft and trained personnel. The experienced carrier Zuikaku and 3 light carriers were lost in the Battle of Cape Engano, leading to the battered mobile fleet retreating to Japan. In Japan, Unryu and Amagi remained in the inland sea near Kure. Upon Ozawa's return to Kure on October 30, 1944, Unryu briefly hosted his flag, marking a short-lived period as flagship of the mobile fleet. On November 7th, Ozawa transferred his flag to the Ryuho, and shortly afterward the mobile fleet was officially disbanded. Following this reorganization, Unryu, Amagi, and later Katsuragi remained mostly inactive. Fuel shortages, a lack of trained pilots, and aircraft scarcity, worsened by the kamikaze campaign in the Philippines, restricted their activity to brief movements within the inland sea. Unryu, under Captain Konami, and the first of her class to be completed, managed to embark some A-6M and B-6N aircraft for patrols in late November. There was brief consideration of using Unryu and possibly Amagi as aircraft ferries or for limited convoy protection, but these plans were quickly scrapped following the submarine sinkings of the escort carrier Shinyo and the large new supercarrier Shinano in November. The submarine threat was deemed too great, and even short coastal trips were considered too risky for training or convoy duties. It seemed Unryu and her sister ships would remain idle for the rest of the war. On the morning of December 13, 1944, news arrived of Douglas MacArthur's invasion fleet sighted in the Sulu Sea, signaling the likely start of the Luzon invasion. The development threw Tokyo into chaos and dramatically altered Unryu's course. To counter the anticipated invasion, the combined fleet urgently ordered the delivery of new experimental rocket-powered kamikaze weapons, known as Okas, to Manila via aircraft carriers. Unryu and Ryuho were assigned to this mission on December 13th. A special shipment of 30 Okas was quickly crated, packed, and loaded onto Unryu's lower hangar deck. The crew, led by Captain Konami, worked swiftly and were likely energized by the prospect of finally seeing action. This was the second attempt by the combined fleet to transport Okas by carrier, the first being the ill-fated Shinano. Whether that prior failure was considered at the time is unknown. Departure was scheduled for December 16th, with Unryu escorted by 2 Matsu-class destroyers, Hinoki and Momi, from Desdiv 52, the former bearing the division leader's flag. These destroyers were agile and well-equipped for anti-submarine and anti-aircraft defense. They were joined by a 3rd destroyer, the renowned Shigure, a veteran of many fierce battles and known for its uncanny survivability. Morale surely soared when Shigure joined the task force at Kure on December 15th. Shigure had a reputation as the sole survivor in battles where all others were lost. In August 1943, it was the only ship from Desdiv 4 to survive the Battle of Vela Gulf, and again in October 1944 at the Battle of Surigao Strait. It survived while the rest of Vice Admiral Nishimura's battleship force was decimated. In hindsight, some historians point to an ironic twist in Shigure's luck, noting the Japanese proverb suggesting that events repeated twice will occur a 3rd time. But such thoughts were likely far from anyone's mind that day. Shigure's arrival caused a short pause in the hectic preparations. That morning, word came that enemy forces were landing at Mindoro, not Luzon, somewhat easing the urgency. This gave time to load extra supplies and personnel for Manila. The departure was delayed by 1 day, and Ryuho would remain behind for another week until additional Okas were ready. On the morning of December 17th at 8:30, Unryu, newly camouflaged with zigzag patterns on her hull and flight deck, departed from Kure. She carried aircraft, torpedo warheads, suicide boats, soldiers, passengers, and most importantly, 30 Oka-flying rocket bombs, all vital for Luzon's defense. Lieutenant Commander Sugama of Comdes Div 52 on the Hinoi oversaw anti-submarine defenses, but overall command of the small squadron and its navigation remained with Captain Konami Konishi. Ironically, Konami, previously tasked with protecting carriers as a destroyer division commander, now commanded one. His orders were to deliver the cargo to Manila and then await further instructions regarding counterattacks at Mindoro and potentially provide air cover for Vice Admiral Shima's surface force from Cam Bay. Konami decided to avoid the Bungo Strait, a known submarine hotspot, and instead steered Unryu west through the Shimonoseki Strait, then south toward the combat zone. On December 18th, in worsening weather, Unryu and her escorts pushed into the China Sea. Twice they detected enemy radar signals and altered their course after nightfall, suspecting American forces had picked them up. At the same time, the U.S. Navy was engaged elsewhere, as severe seas that challenged Unryu were inflicting even greater losses on Halsey's Task Force 38, caught in a typhoon. On December 19th at 9 a.m., Captain Konami ordered heightened alert and increased speed to 18 knots, narrowly avoiding a mine sighting by noon. Unryu was east of the sea-shot islands under darkening skies and turbulent, though easing seas. Patrols were launched promptly, and soon after, the ship's course was altered southward, then quickly veered again to avoid another mine. With visibility worsening and high swells hampering lookout efficiency, Captain Konami drew on his destroyer experience and stressed the importance of sound detection. By 1500, the escort ships were in formation. Shigure at the port bow, Momi at the port quarter, and Hinoi, the flagship of Div 52, at the starboard bow. Konami, along with his executive and navigation officers, scanned the gloomy horizon from the bridge. At 1600, they altered course southward again, unknowingly steering directly into the path of a lurking submarine. The submarine was the USS Redfish SS-395, commanded by Lieutenant Commander McGregor, who had recently torpedoed the cruiser Juno and was eager for another major target. At 1624, Redfish, operating off the China coast, received intelligence from Ultra at Pearl Harbor about a key Japanese task force heading south. A Japanese plane had previously spotted Redfish and dropped a depth charge, prompting McGregor to anticipate the task force's approach and begin his pursuit. Soon, he spotted what seemed to be patrol boat masts on the horizon. His excitement peaked at 1627 when he sighted a large carrier. Gripping the periscope, he gave the order to battle stations and prepared torpedoes. The carrier, unknowingly approaching at a 30-degree starboard angle with 3 escorts, one ahead and one on each side, presented Redfish with an ideal attack position. Without needing to adjust course, McGregor fired a salvo of 6 torpedoes from 1,470 yards at 1637. Meanwhile, Unryu's sound team detected the submarine. Captain Konami was immediately alerted to a contact 30 degrees starboard. Moments later, torpedo wakes and approaching sounds were reported. The ship's guns opened fire instinctively. At 1635, Konami ordered a sharp starboard turn at full speed to evade the torpedoes. Unryu, surprisingly agile, managed to avoid 3 torpedoes, but the 4th struck beneath the forward part of the island. The explosion shook the entire ship. The hit flooded the control center, number 1 boiler room, and forward generator room. The blast also damaged the bulkhead between boiler rooms 1 and 2, flooding the latter and sparking a fire in the forward crew quarters and flammable cargo in the hangar deck. The most severe damage was to the main steam pipe. With both boiler rooms 1 and 2 flooded, only boiler number 8 remained operational. Speed dropped drastically, and the carrier eventually stopped. Electrical power was lost, casting the ship into darkness. Listing 3 degrees to starboard, Unryu did not seem at immediate risk of sinking. Watching from the periscope, McGregor noted the ship's sudden halt, slight list, and flames, but it remained afloat. He knew a second attack was necessary. At 1642, Redfish launched 4 stern torpedoes at the destroyer Hinoi. The commander of WW2 was alert, and Hinoi evaded the torpedoes skillfully. McGregor, now out of loaded torpedoes, regretted his choice to target Hinoi, fearing it had cost him the chance to finish off the carrier. Determined, he remained at periscope depth as his aft tubes were reloaded, despite circling destroyers being dangerously close. Once a Mark 23 steam torpedo was loaded, McGregor closed to 1,100 yards and fired at 1650, aiming behind the carrier's island. For the next 45 seconds, he waited anxiously. On board Unryu, the crew worked urgently to control the damage. They sealed the fire in the crew's quarters and restored power using the operational generator room. Another fire in boiler room number 8 forced its shutdown, but boilers 5, 6, and 7 were brought online to slowly restore steam pressure. The emergency diesel engine started, and the ship's list was managed by jettisoning heavy items from the flight deck. Unryu began to move again, a moment of triumph that proved short-lived. At 1645, as the carrier gained momentum, Lookout spotted another torpedo wake at 113 degrees starboard, heading directly toward them. Gunners fired, but the torpedo struck near the bridge, close to the forward elevator and storage areas containing ammunition, aviation fuel, and Oka bombs. The explosion triggered a chain reaction of devastating blasts as the bombs detonated, tearing apart the bow. Tragically, Unryu was being destroyed by the very weapons she was carrying. On the bridge, Captain Konami and his officers ducked instinctively as a massive explosion erupted in front of them, consuming the bow. The deck tilted forward and violently shifted, causing the crew to be thrown sideways. The ship began listing severely to starboard, a clear and grim sign of its imminent fate. The ship was sinking. The blast had torn open the ship's side, allowing seawater to flood all boiler rooms, trapping the dedicated crewmen who had just moments ago believed they had saved their vessel. Within minutes, the Unryu was tilting more than 30 degrees to starboard, with aircraft sliding into the sea. Recognizing the inevitability, Captain Konami ordered an evacuation. Resigned to his fate, he observed his crew, proud of their composure in their final moments. Gathering on the slanted flight deck, they chanted, "Banzai, long live the Emperor," 3 times before attempting to escape. Some gunners remained at their stations, firing at the enemy periscope until the very end, while some guns continued to fire. At 1657, the Unryu, now nearly vertical on her starboard side, sank rapidly. Those struggling in the water witnessed the stern and port quarter anti-aircraft guns as the last parts of the ship to disappear beneath the East China Sea. Captain Konami, his senior officers, and 1,238 crew members and passengers perished with the ship. While Hinoi aggressively patrolled the area seeking retribution, Momi and Shigure focused on rescuing survivors. Only 146 people were saved. 1 officer, 87 crew members, and 57 passengers, marking the Unryu's demise as a significant maritime tragedy of the war. The ship had only been in service for 6 months, and her loss was mourned universally. The catastrophe mirrored that of the Shinano, with another aircraft carrier sinking with its cargo of Oka bombs not to launch, but to be lost to the ocean's depths. All of this transpired in just 12 minutes from the fatal explosion. Meanwhile, Hinoi was desperately seeking vengeance for the Unryu. Although claiming success, she narrowly missed achieving it. McGregor observed in astonishment as the shock wave from his second torpedo blended with the colossal blast that doomed the carrier. Boldly, he remained to photograph the sinking ship's stern as it disappeared beneath the waves, a risk that nearly cost him his life. Spotting Redfish's periscope, Hinoi aggressively pursued, prompting McGregor to dive quickly. Depth charges cascaded after him, detonating as the submarine reached 150 feet. A cluster of 7 exploded close to the starboard bow, tossing Redfish violently to the left. The impact wreaked havoc inside the submarine. Sonar was disabled, the helm stuck hard left, and the diving planes were set to rise. Cracks appeared, causing leaks in the forward torpedo room, and a sailor sustained serious injuries when a steel door slammed against his head, nearly severing an ear. Adding to the chaos, a loaded torpedo in tube number 8 activated. Despite the turmoil, the submarine hit the seabed at 1712, slightly over 200 feet deep. McGregor then initiated a silent protocol, enduring the depth charge onslaught for 2 hours. Meanwhile, WW2 departed towards China, leaving Shigure behind. Shigure's Lieutenant Commander Manabu Haiji, having joined on December 1st, was determined to capture the submarine that had disrupted his maiden assignment. However, despite searching through the night and the following day, they found nothing. Redfish eventually surfaced after sunset and sped away on the surface. The next morning, its steering motor valves failed, a recurrence of a problem it had faced at Leyte 2 months prior. Lieutenant Commander Manabu, having had enough, rerouted to Cebu, arriving there at 7 a.m. on December 22nd. Unbeknownst to Captain Manabu, this change of course inadvertently saved Shigure. Hinoi and Momi, continuing south, met their fate. Stopping at Cam Ranh Bay on December 26th, they escorted the Utagawa Maru to Manila, arriving on January 4, 1945. This coincided with MacArthur's invasion forces approaching Manila. WW2 attempted to escape to Formosa, but was detected by Luzon invasion forces on January 5th. A relentless chase by surface and air forces ensued. Despite kamikaze support, Hinoi was bombed at 1717, resulting in 21 deaths and 45 injuries, rendering it inoperable. Momi was destroyed by an aerial torpedo at 1910, sinking with all 210 on board. Hinoi narrowly avoided destruction due to nightfall and managed to get underway at 2300, limping back to Manila by dawn on January 6th. This reprieve was short-lived. On January 7th, Hinoi made a futile attempt to reach St. James. Intercepted by American destroyers, it engaged in a brief but intense battle, ultimately sinking at 22:57 with the loss of Commander Destroyer Division 52 and all crew, marking the last surface engagement of the U.S. Navy with the Japanese Navy. As Hinoi's bow tilted towards the heavens before descending beneath the waves that night, it marked the completion of Shigure's eerie cycle of survival and loss. The proverb, "A thing repeated will occur a third time," had manifested again. Leaving Shigure as the sole survivor of the squadron it had departed Kure with on December 17th. The rest of the squadron had been annihilated almost entirely, claiming their crews and intertwining Unryu and WW2's fateful journey with Shigure's legendary saga. This repeated phenomenon of Shigure's isolated survival seemingly exhausted its run of luck on its subsequent mission. As part of Ryuho's convoy H-87, departing Moji on the final day of the year, Shigure's storied existence met its end on January 24, 1945. The renowned Shigure finally succumbed to the ocean's depths. However, the fullest account of that last voyage remains another untold chapter awaiting its time to be shared.